Hello everybody, welcome to our monthly video cast. And once a month, on the first of every month, I do a video cast of our secret book club. So tonight, I'm talking to fans of the macabre, the secretive, the witchy, the mysterious, the steampunks, those of us who think outside the box. Today is October 1st, and it's the beginning, the bringing of the fall. It's already been autumn, but today you can feel it, that nip in the air, that smell of leaves very faintly. Today, you know it's autumn when you woke up and had to put a jacket on, and by the afternoon you were down to a sweater. That's how it is in New England. At least we weren't in t-shirts quite yet. So tonight, I'm going to read to you, and I'm sorry that we could not do this on Facebook Live. My internet is a bit shoddy right now. Maybe there's too much magical elements in the air. But anyway, tonight I'm going to, first of all, throw in your face Salem Switch, my new book. But also I'm going to read to you from 4 different books with spookiness. So the first of them is Witches Everywhere by David Mclean and Felix Eddy. Next is A Bargain of Blood and Gold by Kristen, Jacques. Next is Shiver by my dear friend. It says Guevara Burt Piedmont, but I know her as Burt. Shiver, a Mickey Crow paranormal adventure. Ooh. And lastly is from my dear friend Robert, The Arcs of Earth. So, I'm really enjoying the spooky setting we have. And again, I'm sorry we couldn't do this live, so we're not going to have trivia or games. But anybody who would like to participate and get a free bookmark, then just email me at jessicalucci@jessicalucci.org. So again, here's my book, Salem Switch. I'll read it to you. Professor Tess Alsett is transported back in time 200 years to 1693 in Salem, Massachusetts, where magic and evil lurk. She and her clones are accused of witchcraft and must devise a way to flee back to their own time before they are murdered in the Salem witch trials. Things get more complicated when a beautiful woman befriends the small group of allies, but she is much more than she appears to be. The nearby tribe of Native Americans offer their help, just as the powerful Reverend leads the charge in spiritual, physical, and paranormal warfare. What risks will Tess take in order to achieve fame, love, and prominence? Is her life worth the glory attached to death? Only time will tell. But first, let me read to you from Witches Everywhere, which is a book of spooky poems based on witchcraft and magic with a CK. And I'm putting my special magical reading glasses on so I can read to you. David Mclean is the author of 3 novels, The Life of a Thief, Dragon Bait, and The Time Traveler's Resort and Museum. His short stories and poems have been printed in over 24 magazines. Witches Everywhere is his first book of poetry. He lives in upstate New York. And Felix Eddy is a fine artist and creator in upstate New York. She has illustrated a number of books for both adults and children, including Barks Mulberry Socks, the Doll Collection, The Big Red Purse, and The Bestiary Alphabet, which she also wrote. She works in many mediums, from large-scale oil paintings and small pen and ink drawings to designing embroidery and creating screen prints and quilting. She regularly shows her work in sewn creations at art shows, galleries, and conventions all over the USA. And here is a cool pin I got when I got this book. Isn't that cool? It's reminiscent of the cover. I just really like it. So here's the first poem I'm going to read to you from this book. And here's the illustration. It looks like a woman feeding a mouse to a snake. It reminds me of my friend Renee Fleury, the Sky Captain. Number 1. Tooth of toad, ear of frog, a raven cries out in the bog. Eye of bat, wing of mouse, there's something crawling in your house. An ogre's toe, a cry of the dead, the sound you hear is in your head. A spider's brain, a hangman's nail, try to stop us and you'll fail. Witches crawl among the dead, witches crawling in your head. Witches brew with earth and fire, tell me the truth and I'll call you a liar. Boiling oil, a dash of spice, something naughty, something nice. You'll admit, if you are wise, I'm not unpleasing to your eyes. We know all you see and hear, in every forest far and near. We're on the mountain tops and in the bogs, we're under treetops and over logs. We're the ones who are casting spells. Our lives are where a nightmare dwells. In the water and in the air, there are witches everywhere. I thought that was so good and spooky, and it set the tone for tonight. So the next book I'm going to read to you from is called A Bargain of Blood and Gold by Kristen and Jacques. And again, I'll put my readers on, my magical glasses. And we'll read what the back says. A novice hunter with a mission. A 500-year-old vampire with a strong sense of irony. A town plagued by creatures in need of saving. When Jonathan Newman arrives in Cresthaven, the last thing he expects is for his life to be irrevocably changed. Sent by a clandestine league of vampire hunters to investigate a string of murders, signs point to a vampire lurking amid the townsfolk. Jonathan's attempt to enlist the locals leads him to an unlikely partnership with Vic, the town's most eligible, enigmatic bachelor. As the pair work to solve the mystery, Vic's secrets come back to bite him. As the pair work to solve the mystery, Vic's secrets come back to bite him. Revealed, the vampire fights his attraction to a man trained to destroy him, while Jonathan's emotions land him in the middle of forbidden desires. Even if Vic isn't the murderer, how can Jonathan yearn for his natural enemy? As Vic leads Jonathan into encounters with terrifying beings straight from children's nightmares, Jonathan learns that not only is the world stranger than he knew, but that those he once trusted have far darker intentions that will place hunter and vampire at the center of a conflict between realms. Cresthaven holds more sinister secrets than its resident vampire, a secret so great it could unleash hell itself. Ooh, doesn't that sound spooky? I love it. So I'm going to read to you a little bit from it. Just a couple of pages. And again, I'm going to use my magic glasses. His gaze snapped back to her veiled face. Brave boy, beautiful boy, why do you come? Her voice was the worst of all, for the deception it presented. A soft and sleepy voice, like a tired mother comforting her babe from a night terror, when the Morrigan was the source, the deepest terror in the darkest night. I had to, said Jonathan. Her focus flitted to Vic behind him, but she paid little attention to the vampire. When she reached for Jonathan with white bone hands, he couldn't quite swallow the whimper in his throat, but the Morrigan simply cupped his cheek. The taint of death marks you, but your innocence tastes like honeyed wine. She sighed and released him, looking back at the cowering ranks of fairies. Released from the weight of her attention, Jonathan would have pitched forward if Vic hadn't hauled him to his feet. The Morrigan tilted her head at the other fairies, speaking in that smooth voice of lullabies. We cannot lie. We gild our tongues in silver and spin a net of half-truths, being of the other, the benign, and the nether. We do not possess the gift of deceit. The gathered fairies flinched at her words. But you, Glamour, said Jonathan. Illusion is a lie. He could feel Vic shaking his shoulders, but the words left his mouth before he could stop them. Now we're going to go a little bit further. What? Jonathan stared at her. A riot of confusion knocked around in his skull. The Morrigan struck him as an ancient terror, and he foolishly believed she wouldn't play the word game. Oh, brave boy, said the Morrigan, her expression of mockery of pity. The abandoned boy, left to the mercy of the streets in death's cold embrace. Her words were stones hitting his skin, but it was not his worst secret. She suddenly gripped his chin, pinched in the clamp of merciless white fingers. You must ask the right questions. And I'm going to skip on a little bit more. Vic cleared his throat. John, I need to ask you one more question. The vampire's voice was thick with regret. We need to know how the victims are chosen. Didn't they already? Or did they? Jonathan wanted to deny it, but he knew deep in his gut that Vic wouldn't ask this of him if it wasn't important. The Morrigan waited. He had to ask the question himself. How are the girls chosen? The faintest crease of worry formed around the Morrigan's eyes. What did that mean? Marked in ash by fire and soot, branded to stone and flesh and root. Her bottomless gaze held him, searching for something. He couldn't shake the feeling he'd failed to find the correct wording for this one. Isn't that spooky? And here is what I got with this book was this really cool shiny bookmark. Love a shiny bookmark. And this really cool art to go along with the book of the main characters, Vic and Jonathan. But you can imagine them any way you want. That's just what the artist provided for me. And next up is Shiver, a Mickey Crow paranormal adventure by Gavura Burt Piedmont, my great friend. And all these books, by the way, I purchased at Oddball Newt's latest event, which was the Book Fiend Readers Fest, which is put on every year with or without COVID. And this year, it was so wonderful to see not just steampunk authors, but authors from various sci-fi and speculative fiction get together, put on story times, lectures, tarot card readings, all interesting types of author panels. It was so fun. So now I'm going to read to you the prologue to Shiver, a Mickey Crow paranormal adventure by Gavura Burt Piedmont. And I'm going to get my special magic glasses on for this one too. Dylan slammed out of the cabin and crossed the common area, past the in-ground pool with lanes and floats, everything gray in the light of the full moon. Oh, by the way, it's called Prologue, Shell Beach, Massachusetts. Massachusetts, yo. He followed it, grinding the toes of his sneakers into the ground for emphasis as he talked to himself. Johannes, you're such a jerk. You can't treat someone like crap. Break their heart. The trees ended at the beach. Dylan kept grinding his toes and muttering. The moon lit the tops of the waves and flattened everything. He shoved a knuckle into his eye. Now he was crying over the jerk. Stupid summer hookup at lifeguard school. Not like they would fall in love and spend the rest of their lives together. He knuckled his eyes again. Waves washed in and out, implacable, as they had since the beginning of time. Seaweed bubbles popped and slid under his sneakers as he walked the horrible beach full of stones littered with crab bits and broken shells. The big, gritty sand particles infiltrated his sneakers. Stomping parallel to the high tide mark, along a jagged line of black seaweed, wiping away tears. Dylan tried to imagine how a long-distance relationship would even work between him and Johannes. It wouldn't. He thought about walking to the nearby town and calling for a ride home, just quitting the whole stupid summer program. There must be working phones in that town. Cell phones didn't function in Shell Hell Camp, which lacked cable TV, internet, and everything good associated with being online. And I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Something else moved out there. A triangle cut the water near the round blob that might be the person's head. "Hey, watch out! There's a shark!" "Can you help me?" Dylan towed off in his sand-filled sneakers and ran toward the water, ripping his bare feet on shells, slipping on rocks and seaweed. "I'm coming!" The fin stayed right near the head-like blob, seeming to stalk it. "My foot! Can you help?" The voice expressed no emotion. He had only completed half of his lame lifeguard training. Dylan lacked backup equipment, a view of who he was rescuing in the dark. He was wearing clothes instead of a bathing suit. Dylan lacked a sense of what was happening. What was their foot stuck? And on what? Were they drowning? How large was the shark? And I'm going to skip a little bit more. "Hey, where are you?" he whispered, not wanting to make any noise and detract the shark, although he did not know if sharks had ears. Was it snakes or sharks that were deaf? Or was it the Tyrannosaurus Rex? No, a T-Rex didn't see movement, but Dylan was sure sharks could. Did sharks have night vision, though? Why was his lifeguard education so deficient in important shark facts? "My foot is stuck," said a gravelly voice right in his ear. Dylan couldn't determine the gender, but there seemed to be a cloud of hair. "Where is your foot?" he asked, his numb hand slipping off the rough boulder as he reached out to help. The fin was there, and another fin above the moon-dappled waves. "Sharks!" he warned. The person reached an arm out to him. They clasped each other, wrist to wrist, a good, firm hold, and Dylan felt hopeful. He could save this person. He grabbed at the barnacle-covered rock again, but the other yanked him in the opposite direction. The person Dylan was trying to save pushed him under the water, and it was frigid down there. He coughed, sputtering, trying to drive himself back up to the barnacle-covered rock and stability. The other lurched his wrist, speaking in a gravelly monotone voice, lacking in intelligence, the words running together. "Can you help me? My foot is stuck. Can you help me?" Over and over, pulling him in closer until he could see nothing but teeth, feel nothing but teeth. So let me read to you the back of Shiver. Ooh, that was shivery. A Mickey Crow Paranormal Adventure by Gravera Burt Piedmont. A 25-year-old one-armed woman, Mickey Crow, and her best friend, reluctant socialite Priest, are hired by a friend to investigate a mysterious midnight disappearance of a lifeguard trainee for their paranormal podcast, The Contrary Crowcast. Shell Beach turns out to be an odd place full of strange people. Why does the diner's waitress have a swimming pool full of sharks? Why is there no internet? Did that old fisherman with one leg really inspire the author of Jaws? Who is in the water constantly calling for help? The answer will make you shiver. I thought that was great. And if you were at Burt Gravera Piedmont's stand, her table at the Book Fiend Readers Book Fest put on by Oddball Newt, you would have seen an amazing creature. If you go onto Facebook and look up Burt Gravera Piedmont, or I know her as Burt, but she's Gravera Burt Piedmont, and look up her Facebook, I think you'll find some fascinating, spooky, scary pictures there. And so the last I'm going to read to you tonight comes from The Arcs of Earth by my other dear great friend, Robert Reed Jr. Robert Reed, isn't that a great name for an author? So let me read the back to you. I'm going to read from Part 2, The Lost Ark. The inhabitants of Space Ark 99 know nothing of the outside universe of their mission, which could be disastrous for their future. Bruce Gordon sat alone in the middle of a vacant room. It was a small room with only a chair and a small plastic table for furniture. Spread across the table were an assortment of microscopes, slides, and samples. On one corner sat a special gold-colored box. It was a project he had been working on for many months, and now it was close to completion. He'd slid one of the slides under the largest microscope and observed several tiny living cells. With a tiny instrument, he picked out a few and placed them in a tiny plastic cube. It was very delicate work that required absolute concentration. Outside, an argument began between two men that disturbed him. It was the captain and the first officer. Bruce was the second officer. I'm going to skip a little bit. Bruce knew that every living thing was made of these little tiny cells, which contained the pattern of the whole living organism inside. Certain cells could duplicate these living organisms. He also knew that each organism would wear out eventually, including himself, but new ones would replace the old ones. But for the past few months, he and many others had been taking cells from all the living organisms that currently existed, and all of them were being placed in this gold box. The captain had once said that the purpose of the project was to ensure that these life forms continued to exist. It sounded silly to him, since there were always new ones being made to replace the old ones, so why put all these cells in one box? I'm going to skip a little bit. A few seconds later, two men dressed in black uniforms and blue helmets came down the corridor. They stopped at the door and waited. A few minutes later, the door swung open and the man inside the airlock climbed out. Then he noticed the two men in the uniforms. He backed away from them, but there was nowhere to go. "So now you know," one of the uniformed men said. He removed a pistol from his belt and shot the man. The man backed up against the wall and slid to the floor. "They've been lying to us all this time," the man grunted in his last few seconds. "There's more down there, below the bottom." "You're lucky," the other uniformed man told him. "You are the only Class 4 person who knows about it." The two uniformed men picked up the dead man and carried him away. When they were out of sight, the other two came out of the room. One was a young man and the other was a young woman. Both were dressed in green uniforms, similar to those worn by the men in black. The young man took a step toward the airlock. "No, Fred, let's get out of here before they kill us too," the young woman urged. "Laurie, did you hear what he said?" Fred asked. "He said, 'There's more at the bottom,' something like that. What does that mean?" "This level we're on now is the one on the bottom. The stairways and elevators come down this far. But look, this door is in the floor. It leads downward, below the floor. That means there must be another level, or many levels, below this one." And that comes from The Mysterious Story of the Arks of Earth by Robert Reed Jr. So tonight we read from a variety of stories. We read a little bit of steampunk, we read a little bit of horror, the mystery poetry. We started off with Witches Everywhere by David Mclean and Felix Eddy. So then we moved on to A Bargain of Blood and Gold by Kristen and Jacques. Then we read Shiver, a Mickey Crow paranormal adventure by Gavura Burt Piedmont. And then we ended with The Arks of Earth by Robert B. Reed Jr. And all of these books I got at the Book Fiend Readers Fest by Oddball Newt. And my next show will be October 10th. That's my Waltham Cultural Council and Mass Cultural Council grant show. And we will be reading some more scary things, but geared towards tweens and teens. We might sprinkle a little bit of Edgar Allan Poe in there. I think that would be appropriate. That was suggested to me by my friend Spectacle. A little Edgar Allan Poe, perfect for this time of year, as well as some other spooky poetry. And again, you can find my book, my new spooky book, Salem Switch, on Etsy if you look at Jessica Lucci Books, or if you go on Amazon, you can find it on ebook and on paperback. So again, this is Jessica Lucci. May your clocks always chime, and happy spooky time.